This is an opportunity that is a real privilege for the board to select a Farmer of the Year. But before I begin talking about the Farmer of the Year, I want to encourage you all to nominate deserving farmers to be honored at the conference as the Moses Organic Farmer of the Year next year. The board selects the winning Farmer of the Year family from among the nominees that come from the audience, from the community at large. And it's a real honor for that farmer. We give them a plaque. We also give them a $400 check and a $100 gift certificate to the Moses bookstore. So the way to nominate a Farmer of the Year is to go on the Moses website, and under the Projects tab on the website, you'll see the form to fill out for nominating a Farmer of the Year. So I encourage you to do that for your colleagues that are leading us through this organic movement, so to speak. The Moses Organic Farmer of the Year awards and honors farmers for three things: their outstanding land management, innovative farming practices, and the outreach that they do to teach others about how organic farming works. As we consider this year's candidates, the board, one nominee just came out and stood out to all of us. It was not a slam dunk, because we always have conversations about pros and cons of this and that, but it's a wonderful conversation. And it was so easy because the family that was nominated and selected has been farming organically since the 1980s, back before there were organic standards and before there was an organic label, and there was not an organic premium. The reason this family farmed organically was because they believed it was healthier for the land and for their livestock and for their family and community. Because organic wasn't the norm back then, they had to learn for themselves which practices worked well in an organic system. They partnered with researchers at the Iowa State University over years and have conducted more than 40 on-farm research trials. That's a pretty significant number. They've also worked tirelessly to promote organic farming in their home state of Iowa and at the national level as well. They were founding members of the Practical Farmers of Iowa, PFI as we all know it, and served on the board of the Organic Farming Research Foundation, and have also been involved as leaders in the 4-H organizations and others as well. They have had more than 35 field days on their farm and have hosted visitors from around the world showcasing how organic works on an Iowa organic farm. In short, this family personifies all that this award recognizes for innovation and land management and animal stewardship, etc. So I'm very proud to introduce Ron Rosmann. And Ron, if you'll come up. I'm going to give you this plaque as soon as I can uncover it. There it is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
2018 Organic Farmers of the Year, the Rosmann Family Farms. Innovative farmers who practice outstanding land stewardship while teaching and inspiring others to grow organically. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. No, you're going to bring your family up. I'm also going to give Ron a check, which is right up here. And Ron, if you would bring your family up and introduce them, I will turn the stage over to you. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
Yay, Maria!
Yeah, actually, I'm going to have Maria introduce the rest of the family here first.
Thank you. Joining us this evening is Daniel Rosmann, our middle son. Daniel and his wife, Ellen Walsh Rosmann, live next door to us by a quarter mile. They live in the home place where Ron's father and grandfather raised their family. So we're pretty much kind of entwined into Shelby County. During the slideshow, I will introduce you to our other family members as well. Thank you.
We have a little slideshow prepared for you. First of all, I would like to thank everyone, especially those people that nominated us. You know, we're amongst our peers and our friends here that we value so much. I see so many of the PFI family, PFI members for many, many years that are here tonight, and that means a great deal. We've been working since 1986 as an organization, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. So it's wonderful to see so many people here, and I believe this is one of the, if not the very largest organic conference in the country. And I've had the opportunity to go out to Eco Farm in California a number of times when I was on the Organic Farming Research Foundation, and I know those numbers are not what this has come to be. So that speaks very well of Moses and the Moses Board and the tremendous commitment that all you folks have made. And so thank you for that, and let's give them a round of applause. We're kind of all in this together. You know, it's easy to stand up at a conference like this and feel totally accepted and welcomed. First of all, you know, we've been hearing that word PFI. Well, that's where we first got our interest in 1982, Maria and I did. We read an article about Dick and Sharon Thompson. They quit using pesticides in the 60s already on their farm 10 miles west of Ames. Dick had a master's in animal science from Iowa State, but he was asking questions. He saw the health of his livestock decline, the yields of his crops were declining, the quality of his crops. So he said, well, what's going on here? But instead of just trying things in a haphazard way, he decided, well, he had a scientific mind. I'm going to ask research questions where I can do randomized replicated trials and get real answers. And it just so happened that was the advent of the time of the New Farm magazine out of Rodale Research Institute, which, by the way, has resurrected with the Organic Farmers Association. So I went to not a field day, just 3 or 4 of us farmers went up there, and we took Dick's place, and I found out that he had cleaner crops than we did, and we were using pesticides, and I thought, wow, what's he doing? So we talked, and the wheels started in motion, and I thought, this is really great because he's being a practical scientist. So in 1983, we decided to quit using all pesticides on our 320-acre farm. But it was easier for us than perhaps it is today because my father never gave up the crop rotations and the diversity and the farrow to finish hogs and the cow-calf and the oats and the hay and the pasture. And so even though we used pesticides and anhydrous ammonia, I knew I could figure this out because we had most of it already. And I was lucky enough to obtain a degree from Iowa State in biology, but I also had 2.5 years in farm operations and studied a lot of psychology and sociology as well, and was considering a different career path. But my dad said, would you come home and try farming for a year, or I'm going to rent the land out. That was 1972. So I really thought deeply about it, and I thought, wow, that's not going to happen. I can be happy back home in a rural area, I thought. I always loved working outside. I've always loved nature. Yes, living in a small town is going to have its challenges, especially when you're single. Are you going to find that right person? Who are your friends going to be, etc.? But we did it, and I never looked back. I never looked back. So anyway, a couple things that I want to talk about that stand out about Dick Thompson, who has since passed. Dick has said that when livestock leave the farm, a lot of the farm goes with it. Well, I thought about that before I came up here, and I thought, well, I would like to expand on that. So here's what I have to offer. When soil and soil biology leave the farm, soil quality and soil health leaves it too. And when people leave the farm, community and culture leave too. And when, thank you, and when integrity and honesty leave our government, then our country will ultimately leave us. So with that, we're going to start the slideshow. Let's go back. We actually took a vacation to Yellowstone in September. And yes, Maria's got a Minnesota sweatshirt on, but she's not from Minnesota. She's from Sioux City. But our oldest son, David, did live in Minneapolis for 7 years, so we have fond memories of Minnesota. We love to go fishing up there, too. And I get up to St. Paul frequently because I'm a board member of Catholic Rural Life. I was the only farmer on that board for nearly 5 years, and now we've managed to get a second farmer. So we're making progress amongst all the bishops. And we actually have an archbishop, and they're great people. Their hearts are where ours are.
Oops, sorry. This is our family. Some of them, we were gathered at the time for a niece's wedding in August of 2016. And missing from that family, among the grands, is Daniel and Ellen's oldest child, Xavier. And he's, honest to God, as cute as everyone else's grandchildren. But he's a delightful, delightful child. So on the left, there, of course, is Daniel holding Geneva and Mom, Ellen. Not here with us this evening. Also, who I can't see very well out there. Show of hands for somebody that has someone at home doing chores. Ta-da! David is home doing chores for Dan and Ellen, as well as monitoring our store. And with them is Maggie. Margaret Mary was born 5 days after Geneva was. And with David is his wife, Becky. Becky is a clinical psychologist in student health at Creighton University in Omaha. Then on their right is our youngest son, Mark. Mark works for the Foreign Agricultural Service in Washington, D.C. for the USDA. And when we were asked to come up with a family photo, I thought, shoot, we don't have a family photo, a current one. And how do you Photoshop Mark in? And I figured this isn't going to work. And I looked at that and thought, we have to have this photo. With Mark is, at the time they were not married, was his wife, Courtney Dunham. At the time she was battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This was August 20th of 2016 that photo was taken. And they were married the day before Thanksgiving in Washington, D.C. The wedding was to have taken place in Oregon, which is her home state. And her cancer worsened, and they decided we better have our wedding sooner versus later, when all treatment options failed. So they were married for a whopping 34 days when she passed 2 days after Christmas. But I told Mark, I said, we want to have this photo as our family photo, because no matter where his life takes him, she will always be a part of it. And we miss her dearly. She had a great impact on our lives and certainly on our son's life. Want to click? This is the rest of the family, and the picture's backwards. But the previous one was when we clean up. This is taken at the Harlan Community High School. It was a cancer benefit for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and for leukemia. And that was taken, that we as a family decided to go and become sponsors, and Mark, not in the picture, was a sponsor on behalf of Courtney, but you could see we were all part of the event. Now, what I had the chance to do 6 years ago, going on 6 years, is open a store. What we, on our premises of the farm, when the for 20-some years, we, like all farmers, if you have livestock, somebody's, a neighbor or a friend or a relative will want to buy a quarter or a half. And we started having the opportunity to be in a grocery store in Des Moines and a grocery store in Ames, Iowa. And people started buying more. People started buying off of a CSA that really wasn't a CSA. And we were starting to run out of legal storage space for our, I had 8 freezers at the time, chest freezers. And Tom Franson will attest to this, that I say that Ron is far more of a forward thinker than I am. So Ron just casually, one day honestly, truly said, well, let's put up a store. And I said, okay. And he built one. We had a contractor come and put up a shell of a building. And what's cool about, you can kind of see on the floor and on the sidewalls, which you don't see, is a flooring, whoops, go back. The flooring that, there. The flooring comes from old granaries that were found on Daniel and Ellen's property, the boards from it. So 3 walls of that shop store, or store, and the floor come from these boards from, because who tears down a granary and pitches or burns the wood? And on the east wall that you don't see is our boards from a barn that we lost. So anyway, this is, I opened up a store. Before I knew what was to be in it, I knew it was going to be called Farm Sweet Farm. And we're in year 6. We sell our own certified organic beef and pork and popcorn and a variety of other things, local honeys, local, not so much crafts, but local stitchery, items that I buy from Ellen and Daniel's business, Farm Table Delivery. So it's been a delightful opportunity, and I was telling Irene Franson that it's all mine to make or break. If I succeed at it, or if I fail at it, it's mine to do, and that's what I'm excited about. So thank you.
This is like getting a preview of a movie, isn't it? I have to make note that I'm so proud of our son, David, who couldn't be here, came back and they decided to start farming after he left the land stewardship project in Minnesota. And so he's now 36. So he's been farming now 3 years. I think he's starting his third year. Daniel's been farming with us since 2007. And then Mark works for the Foreign Ag Service, but his work, he was in Honduras in the Peace Corps, and he met Courtney through that. They didn't really know each other down there. She was in Honduras. But after the Peace Corps, Courtney became head of Farmer to Farmer network in all of Central America for the Partnership of the Americas, which is the old John F. Kennedy Alliance for Progress program, which is still federally funded, believe it or not. And Mark works in food aid. He's in charge of food aid for 4 countries in Central America. And he's also one of the top people in coffee for the USDA. He's currently in charge of $60 million of coffee projects. It's become his specialty. But it's all with small farmer co-ops. That's the beauty of it, And I've gotten the bug, too. I've been in Honduras 3 times, and now we have a project going through our local churches in Nicaragua. And I hope to, God willing, do a lot more traveling and seeing what the rest of the world looks like. Back to the farm. I'm just going to quickly run through these because, we don't have all night. We have grown from 320 acres organic to now 700 acres. And the beauty of this is that 630 of it is all in one piece. We have an organic hog operation of 50 sows about. We've been growers for organic prairie since 2003, and for the beef since 1998. We just put up a hoop building for farrowing. We've had 2 farrowings in it. It's used primarily in March and April and May, and then again in late August, September, October with 2 large farrowings. But we also have a Swedish deep bedding confinement, if you will, where the hogs, go outside. But it's not a hoop building. It's just was a confinement hog building at one time. We've grown to 100 red Angus cows. Maria sells about 45 to 48 head of beef through her store. That's a lot. It really is. And the rest goes to Organic Valley, Organic Prairie. You can see we're not flatlanders like everybody thinks Iowa mostly is. But we have our livestock out in the fields all winter, all during the fall. They run out on all the acres, and our best gains on our feeder calves that are still on their mothers always comes in September, October, and November. Always. Just food for thought. When you got cattle running over your hay ground, your pasture ground. No, not the pasture, because you want to let that rest. I meant to say your hay ground, your oat stubble, your cover crops, your corn stalks, your soybeans, and all the headlands that are organic. Just a couple pictures there. We do get snow in western Iowa, as you can see. That was 2009. We had to drive the cattle up the road, and that was a really hard winter. We still managed to feed our cows out in the field, though. It's a must. Keep them out of the yards. We raise our own bulls for probably 12 years now. There's David with our compost. We actually, the first thing I did in 1983 when we quit using pesticides was I bought a Wildcat compost turner, a pull behind the tractor PTO, and I've stuck with it for lots of different reasons. It's, some people argue that composting, you lose a lot of the N, P, and K, but I say you're feeding the soil, you're feeding the microbes, and they're doing their thing to break the compost down into stable products. And we kill the weed seed too. We don't buy any purchased fertilizers. I guess maybe in 35 years we've bought, once in a blue moon we might buy some pit manure that's high, old pit manure that can be used because it's high in phosphorus. If we're low in anything, it's phosphorus in western Iowa. Potassium, I've never put on any potassium since 1983. We're just not product people. And the reason I know that works is part of our philosophy towards, that what's great about our current Pope, Francis, is that he wrote an encyclical called Laudato Si, which is on care of God's creation. If you take care of God's creation and allow biological systems to work, and we are just the bystanders. Yes, we maybe plant different seeds and we have different crop rotations, and we allow diversity in cropping systems. We let nature flourish. It is the ecological services that every part of the system brings to the farm that makes it work. Just plain and simple. Now, yes, we have been blessed with very fertile soils where we are. Not every farmer can do that. I realize that. You got to look at your soil tests. You got to be scientific about it. You got to test. You got to see what your soil tests say. But don't just totally bank on that. That's not the cure-all answer either, of course. But if you have diversity in crop rotations and livestock, where you can rely on legumes and regenerative and manure and regenerative soil crops and cover crops, you're well on your way. Now, we've loved having, it's a love-hate relationship when you have tours. It's like putting on a wedding every year because we want everything to be just right. It's a good incentive to get the farm shop cleaned out every year. And then 2 weeks later, it's back to the way it was. So anyway, you're well aware of that. That's a field of buckwheat, by the way. Okay, yeah, we still are ridge tillers. We still believe in it because the science and the research trials show that we have better weed control than any conventional system of tillage. We've been doing this since 1987. Here's one of those trials back in 2008. I'll read this. 5 to 7 times more weeds in conventional tillage versus ridge till. We've done this trial 4 times over a 20-year period. Every time in broadleaves, we would have 5 to 7 more times more weeds by hand counting the weeds. And you can see in that picture there where Daniel is, just by looking there, which trials are the conventional tillage. The ones with the button weeds in them are conventional tillage. In ridge till, you don't get grasses, period, if you do it right. Grasses cannot exist in that environment where the planter sweeps the ridge that was made with the cultivator the season before at final cultivation, It has a very narrow press wheel that puts the seed in there. You're taking the top 2 to 3 inches of soil off where most of the weeds are. You're throwing them into the center of the row along with the crop residue and anything that's growing. And you leave a ground condition that is not packed. Small seeded weeds like pigweed, lamb's quarters, foxtail, they want compaction. But if you don't have compaction, if you have just that narrow band 1 inch wide where the press wheel goes over the seed, you are going to curtail weed growth. Sorry to say, ridge-till has gone out of style. You don't learn how to do it in 1 year. We've been doing it for 31 years now, and you still keep learning. Maria's talked about the store, so I'm going to turn it over to Daniel and Ellen.
I'd first like to start by also thanking Moses for this honor and thanking our farmer friends and everyone else for their support over the years. It's meant so much to us. And I would also like to acknowledge my parents. They've instilled the values of sustainable and organic in myself and my brothers. And now I and my wife are trying to pass that on to our children as well. It's been an uphill battle over the years. We live in an area that's kind of caught in a sea of complacency. But my dad and mom have never stopped fighting, are always working to get more people on the land, and we're trying to live that as well.
Hi, I'm Ellen, and I'm the daughter-in-law. So I actually met Daniel when I was interning for PFI, so thank you, PFI, for bringing us together. But right away, because of the way that Daniel was raised, I knew that we would get along, and we both had very similar passions in regards to social justice and environmentalism, and I think that's a lot because of the pivotal shift that his parents made in the 80s was because of those foundations that were laid. So I moved to the farm a week before the wedding in 2010, and so end of August of 2010, and I did my first grocery shopping trip at the Hy-Vee in Harlan. And I had come from working at a food co-op in Ames, so it was a little culture shocked. And it's not like I grew up in rural America. I'm used to that. But everything was coming from California and wrapped in plastic, and there was nothing local, and here it is at the end of August. And I didn't really know what I was going to do when I moved to the farm. I knew I always wanted to be a farmer, and so I knew I had that opportunity. And I remember I told Ron, like, the first couple of weeks, I was like, can I just take care of the boars or something? I just wanted to have some sort of ownership with the farm. Originally we were going to start like a goat dairy, and we realized that we would have to have 10 children in order to make that work. And quickly realized that our labor was already stretched. So I decided to grow vegetables, and I didn't really know how to grow vegetables. And we grew very quickly and started a small CSA in our county. Nobody knew what a CSA was. We had 5 members. Nobody knew what heirloom tomatoes were. They didn't know what kale was. And then Xavier came along, and at this point we had expanded our CSA into Omaha and had started working with a number of restaurants and chefs. And we grew about an acre of sweet corn, and there was a grocery store who wanted 3 deliveries that week. And so I had to load up our little Mazda car and drive that to Omaha with Xavier and put him in the baby carrier and deliver all this produce. And at the end of that crazy week, Daniel said, next year, someone else is delivering this. And one thing led to another, and we started visiting with our other farmer friends who were doing local foods about, if a truck just showed up at your farm, wouldn't your life be a lot easier? And wouldn't you be able to expand into more markets? And the answer was yes. So we didn't know that we started a food hub, but we did. And we are in year 4 of being a formal food hub. And we work with over 40 producers across the state of Iowa, some into Nebraska. Most are certified organic or organically grown. And we have sold over $1.2 million worth of their food in the last 4 years to institutions, schools, restaurants, and grocery stores. Thank you. And I'm only growing 4 tomato plants. So that's Farm Table, and that's where I spend probably about 90% of our time. We now have a 6,000 square foot warehouse that we rent from the city of Harlan, and I work with a number of farmers here in this room, so it's great to see you all. Yeah, I love it, and new farmers are writing us into their business plan, and we really feel. I started sociology, and I remember that first fall when I moved to the farm, I would study what was happening in the driftless area, and how can we replicate this and the co-ops and the creameries and all these things that have happened in the infrastructure that is here in southwest Iowa. And so that's kind of the angle that we've taken, is we're an infrastructure support for farmers, and we just happen to deliver and market their goods for them. Shortly after, do you want to say? Okay. After we operated the food hub for a couple years, I actually come from a restaurant family. Daniel complained about the lack of our food choices in our town. And I said, well, maybe we should, or Daniel said, maybe we should just start a restaurant. And I was like, I don't know. I grew up in a restaurant family. Well, we did. And we will be open for 3 years in June. So it's farm to table restaurant. And we couldn't do it because if we didn't have the food hub. So that makes it really easy. We just purchase things from ourselves. The beef is from our farm, and the eggs are from our farm, and the pork. And we have a seasonal menu, and we just do breakfast and lunch, and we have a professional chef who works with us. And between these two businesses, we're creating this educational thing in our community. The schools exclusively are serving local yogurt because of the demand. When we started our CSA, we didn't use it to make money. We used it to educate people about what food should taste like. So this is not. I mean, it's nice to make money, but the first week we were open, it really spoke volumes about the tool that a restaurant or whatever it might be, the Maria store, can be for your rural community. Over half of the people in the room were eating hamburger from our farm, and they probably never had anything organic before. So that was pretty powerful. And between the two businesses, between Milk and Honey and Farm Table, we have about 15 employees, I believe it is. So, and couldn't do without the employees, obviously. I don't know, that's just a little bit about, whenever I introduce myself, I say I wear many hats in the food system, and we wear many hats in the food system. So the only thing we have left to do, and maybe this will be what Ron does, is process and make sausage or something.
I have one more comment to make. We come pretty blessed because if we had sons who chose to, spend their lives doing other professions, our lives would be a whole lot different. And we would hopefully be mentoring someone in to take over the farm or finding someone who would want to farm organically. That would be a for sure. We've been very fortunate that our sons, both of them, have joined us, and Mark always in spirit. When you, like you with kids that are away from your farms, how's the calving going? How's this going? How's that going? They don't leave the farm, even though they may live halfway across the country. So I speak for our family and saying, by golly, this is really quite nice. So we appreciate it. We appreciate the people who have nominated us. And in the spirit of it all, we're done. So we're done hearing. Thank you so much.
I have just a couple closing thoughts. Probably because a couple of my peers cornered me and asked two difficult questions that I'd like to try to answer. And boy, I don't have any notes for this, so I'm on my own. How do you, first question was, what do you tell the banker when the banker says to a conventional farmer, you can't go organic because you're going to lose too much money in the transition years, and that you would be better off liquidating the farm now? And so I asked a couple more questions. Well, what do you want to do? Well, I'd like my world to get a little smaller. And I said, well, can you... After I thought about this, my answer right now is maybe you need to try to find that sweet spot by liquidating part of the farm and farming less organically. They are already currently organic farming. But the banker's saying you'd be better off not organic farming and liquidating. So since you don't want to give up the organic, and if you think you could make sufficient money by liquidating some of that farm to get it a little smaller, maybe that is an alternative to think about. I don't know for sure. But then the next question was, what do you tell a conventional farmer who's trying, where can he sell his corn to get any more money? And how is he going to make any more money unless he keeps trying to farm more acres, which is going to put him in more debt? And then that just brings about more consolidation and less people on the land, and just keeps destroying rural communities. So that's a tough one. Now, if the other government has a few little programs for transitional organics, but it's not enough, that's for sure. I'm thinking, well, how we did it, we had the soil fertility. We didn't lose that much yield because we had the livestock and we had the manure and we had the crop rotations, and we never gave up the livestock. But I made the comment before we became certified organic, which was 1994, that we could cut our input costs to zero and still not survive unless we got more for our product. So we were surviving somehow from 1983 till 1994 without a premium on anything. Now, we managed to do it because of our fertility, and we had some good years with conventional hog prices there back in those days, in some of those years. So I think, what advice could I give? Don't buy new equipment, get along with used and old equipment, keep fixing it. But I know this person's already doing that. Maybe you cut way back on your purchased inputs, but maintain your livestock. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of hours of work. But it's worth it if you have the passion for being a steward of the land. And also, I would say, don't worry about debt. What is it you want in life? I don't know. Unless you had everything handed to you and inherited a great deal of wealth, farming, we're all in debt. And who cares? As long as it's manageable. Yes, it's got to be manageable. You got to be heading in the right direction. And that's where organic comes in. You got to have organic prices or value-added prices if you're going to make it. Just plain and simple. But if that isn't enough, well, then maybe some other decisions have to be made. That's the best answer I could give, I guess. Or maybe there's something else you could grow on the farm. We never even talked about our popcorn operation. It doesn't make us much money, but I eat popcorn every night, so I'm not going to give it up. That's just the way it's going to be. It's sort of a professional hobby, and we sell 5,000 pounds of popcorn through our store every year. So it is what it is. But in my closing remark is this. Well, a couple things. I touched on, today we are blessed with having a lot of knowledge, more than we've ever had before. We know now that there has to be a marriage between ecological and social justice. That means justice for people and justice for our earth and God's creation. Isn't that what we're fighting for with climate change and how we use or abuse or care for this wonderful creation that we are only starting to find more about? We had a brief conversation about that we have not begun to know enough about soil microbiology or how cells work in terms of systems, just like how farming systems work, but how intricate our systems are in each one of our bodies and how important it is that we have diversity and that we eat healthy and that, A, B, C, D, and E on down the line. And remembering that we are only human. We are not going to be here that long. But if we want to pass it on to our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren, and so on and so forth, we have to plant the seed today. It is our responsibility. And if we don't, it's not a harvest for us to harvest. We are planting the seed. Let's keep up this revolution. Thank you.